Welcome to Layer of the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, another in my series of milestone moments. These are moments and albums that can define a band's career, and in this case, help create a new subgenre of metal. The album that we will be discussing today is Candlemass and their 1986 album, Epicus Doomicus Metallicus. And for an epic album like this, I had to have some epic guests. So let me introduce our guests here at the Lair today. Joining me from the Christian metal capital of Sweden, Jan Schoping, is author and journalist Per-Ola Nilsson. And joining me from his secret bunker somewhere on the outskirts of Sweden is the founder and mastermind behind the 70s inspired metal band Dead Cosmonaut, Mattias Reinholdsson. So gentlemen, thank you for joining me here at the Lair for this special episode.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Now, the three of us, we have a connection besides being massive fans of Candlemass. And for those people who know me personally know that Candlemass is one of my favorite bands. And I often get the question, when are you doing a Candlemass episode? How can you have gone this long without talking about Candlemass? Well, it's because I had to have these guys here with me. Going back, gosh, I don't even know when we started this, but we had a Candlemass fanzine that the three of us worked on called the Candlemass Chronicles. This was our first issue here, on which each issue covered a different album. So we started with From the 13th Sun. What year did this come out? Do you remember, Mattias?
Doesn't it say?
2008. 2008.
2008, okay. Then we went through all the albums. Per-Ola got on board starting on our second issue. We went right to Epicus, and then we covered pretty much all the albums. Was there any album that we didn't cover? Dactylius, I think. We didn't cover Dactylius, did we?
No, we didn't.
We did 5 issues.
Yeah. There's quite a few left to do, actually.
Yeah, actually, then we didn't do it. There were quite a few we didn't cover.
I remember we started to work on the Nightfall one, and that took a while. And then P.O. got an offer to make the book. So
right, which all this led up to this book, the Behind the Wall of Doom book, which Per-Ola put this together. He used some excerpts, some stuff from the Chronicles. He filled in all the gaps, and it's a beautiful, fantastic book that gives you the history of Candlemass. It was inside the Wall of Doom, a box set. So there are still some copies of that Wall of Doom box set out there. If you don't have that, you need to get it, if for nothing else, for this absolutely awesome book that Per-Ola did an amazing job putting together. All right, so the album that we're here to talk about today is the monumental milestone here that is 1986 Epicus Doomicus Metallicus from Candlemass. So Per-Ola is going to set us up here, and he's going to go back and he's going to start right around with this album, Nemesis, which is sort of the precursor band to Candlemass. So P.O., would you like to start the story here for us?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot, and and I think precursor is the right word for Nemesis. Some people like to think of Nemesis and Candlemass as the same band, which is understandable, but it wasn't. Nemesis was an entirely different band that Leif split up somewhere around late 1984 or so. They recorded the 5-song album that you showed there, The Day of Retribution. It was released in 1984, and it was really a demo that the record label just pressed on vinyl and released. Then Leif disbanded Nemesis late 1984 for whatever reason, I'm not sure, and formed Candlemass. Early 1985, I think, and the founding members were Leif himself and the drummer, first drummer for Candlemass, Mats Ekström. And they were like hammering away, and Leif had some songs. He was the sole songwriter, and I'm sure some of the tracks were possibly Nemesis songs originally. But you can hear a little difference between the songs that were written in the Nemesis days and the first few Candlemass songs, but had like a more of a metal edge and a more of an epic scope to them. So the Epicus album was recorded, I believe, February 1986, which was about a year into their existence as Candlemass. And they had recorded 2 demos at the time, and Mark Shelton of Manila Road had convinced Black Dragon Records, which is a French independent label, to sign Candlemass to record an album. And they recorded that in early 1986. And at that point, they weren't really a band. There were 3 guys. There were Leif on bass guitar, and there was also reluctantly doing vocals on the demos. And they had Mats Ekström on drums, and Mappe Björkman had joined as a guitar player, and he was a rhythm guitar player. He did not care for playing solos. So there were just those 3 guys that were actually members of the band, and so they had some guest musicians performing on that album. That was Johan Lennqvist laid down the vocals, which was really just a guy they knew of. I believe through the drummer knew Johan as a guy who sang for another band in the same town. So somehow they convinced him to record vocals on the album. And the lead guitar player Claes Bergvall was like a semi-hotshot guitarist in the northern Stockholm suburbs, I suppose. So they convinced him to play guest solos. And the album is largely self-made because it was recorded in the Heavy Load Swedish heavy metal band Heavy Load rehearsal studio. They had like home-built studio in their rehearsal room in the Stockholm subway, which they used to record their demos. And they recorded some Stockholm bands went there to record demos and whatnot. But Epicus was the first album that was recorded in that studio. And everything is like kind of homemade, you know. This location you wouldn't believe unless you've been there. Like it was like a door into a stone wall right down at the subway station, and they had to like stop recording songs if they were like playing the acoustic intro for Solitude, and they had to redo it because a train went by and you could hear the train on the take. So
and the producer of the record was the guy that owned the studio, right? Ragnar?
Yeah, Ragnar Wahlqvist. He and his brother Styrbjörn were both playing in Heavy Load, and it was their studio. And Ragnar was recording engineer, and I believe he's credited as co-producer as well. And he plays keyboards in the album, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And well, they released the album in 1986, in the summer of 1986, to very little fanfare, I suppose. It was like an underground album not a lot of people picked up on. Didn't get any, maybe it wasn't trashed in the press or anything, but it didn't get any rave reviews, and it sold poorly. Black Dragon Records even wanted to drop Candlemass because the sales were so poor. So Epicus didn't start to sell until a couple of years later, when they got more success with Messiah, when they got out to play live, and they did Nightfall and especially Ancient Dreams, which was their best-selling album at the time. Then a couple of more years down the line, Epicus started to sell too. And I think over the years it was considered more of a classic album, and perhaps the best or most classic Candlemass album. It wasn't really like that in the beginning. Like that came a good few years later.
Yeah, and it's important to sort of put into context that 1986 in the metal world, basically everybody where thrash metal is in full steam. Basically, you know, at this point, everybody's trying to play faster than everybody else. Everybody's trying to be more, vocals are getting more extreme. And then Candlemass goes in the opposite direction, and they go back to Black Sabbath, and they release this album that's heavy, slow. The vocals on it from Johan are, at this time, everybody's trying to sing higher than everybody else, and Johan has this operatic, dramatic baritone style voice. So it's an album that really is a child out of time in a lot of ways. I mean, everybody else was doing something different at this time. I mean, Mattias, what were your impressions what are your memories of first hearing this album, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, to start off with, I remember when I heard songs or heard Candlemass for the first time. There was a radio show on national radio P3 here in Sweden called Rockbox, which was 45 minutes of music once a week. And they played, and this must have been when I heard Candlemass, when Nightfall was out. And I fell in love with that Candlemass. But the thing is, talking about Epicus being put out on an underground label, I remember that back then, and this is now 87 or early 88, when I tried to get hold of the album, I couldn't find it. I grew up in a very rural area in the south of Sweden, so there wasn't like any underground record stores that you could go to, like in Stockholm, to buy your records. I had to go on Skivåban, was this big mail order where you could get records from, and they didn't have Epicus for sale. So for me, I couldn't get the album. So I got Nightfall, and then later I found a second-hand. This must have been like later 88 or even in 89 when I found this second-hand picture disc of the album, and that was my copy of the album for many years. That was that picture disc of the first album, and yeah, exactly. And the picture disc, if you bring it out, John, I mean, this was pre-internet, pre-everything, basically, and there's no information on it. I mean, you can hear there's a band, there's a picture of 3 guys, and I had seen a picture of the Messiah Candlemass, and I mean, I heard there wasn't a Messiah voice on the album, but who is this guy singing? I don't know. Is he on this picture? I don't think so. But why isn't the singer on the picture for the picture disc? There was so much mystery or confusion about it, and it took a while before I actually found out. Okay, these are the guys playing on the album, and everything about it. And I mean, we were learning things when we made the magazine, like, okay, oh, I didn't know that. So there's and that's a bit of, I think that's the charm of the album, and it's the cover, the simplicity, the music, the mystery. It's a package in that way. It was a slow discover, apart from the music itself, of course, because that I could hear, but everything else was in a shroud of mystery. But I fell in love. I was the guy that liked, and remember, this was when I was 12, 13 years old. I liked the long, epic Maiden songs. And here was this band doing an album of just epic songs. So it was like, this is my album. This is my band. I like this band.
Cool. How about you, PL? How did you discover this album? What were your early experiences with it?
So my first Candlemass album was Nightfall, right? And that would be in the early 2000s. I think right around the time that Candlemass got back together. And I was 19 or something. And I was just, this was a time of Millennium List. Everybody was listing the 100 best album, 25 best albums of the millennium or whatever. And I was seeing Candlemass mentioned a lot, and I was thinking, oh, the Swedish band, I should check them out. So I bought this remastered CD edition of Nightfall, and I loved that. And I didn't get Epicus then because I got Ancient Dreams next, and then Tales of Creation, and I didn't get to Epicus until after that, because somehow in my mind, Epicus compared to the Messiah era, which had just, that version of the band had just got back together, and they were out playing songs, and the Messiah was there waving his monk's robe and being all crazy and whatnot. To me, that was the classic Candlemass, and Epicus was an album before that, in like a formative embryo of Candlemass, if you like. That was what it looked like to me. Even though a lot of people were saying Epicus was also great, or perhaps even the best Candlemass album. But in my mind, the three Messiah albums were a priority. So I got to Epicus after I had those three albums, and I mean, I liked it a lot at first, but to me it wasn't at that point, it wasn't like it outdid Nightfall or anything. I was still holding Nightfall as my favorite album. And I think, much like it was for Candlemass, it became their biggest album with time. It became their biggest album with me over time also, because I found that in a way it lasted better than the Messiah era albums. There was a more of a mystic aura to it. The songs were less accessible, but more interesting in some ways. And I'm not sure if there was ever really a point where I had this epiphany and felt, well, wow, this is actually the best Candlemass album. But it sort of grew on me over the years. And I think I like Epicus the most. After all, it's the one I return to the most often, and so on. So I suppose a couple of years after I first discovered Candlemass, I was ready to say Epicus was in fact the best album, and that still holds up. I know, yeah, it became the winner in the long run.
Yeah, I had an interesting sort of discovery of Candlemass. I was living in the 90s, right before I got married, in Arlington, Virginia. And for doom metal fans out there, Pentagram is from Maryland and the Northern Virginia area, that whole area. So I stumbled across, I had drifted away from metal a little bit in the early 90s. I'd sort of lost a little bit of interest. I was just starting to get back into it, and I stumbled across Be Forewarned by Pentagram. I loved the cover, the song titles. I got it, and I just loved it. And right after I got it, I moved to Pennsylvania. And as soon as I moved to Pennsylvania to get married, I read in a Metal Maniacs magazine a review of Review Your Choices that said, it called it doom metal. And that was the first time I ever heard that expression. This would have been 96. The next day, I went to a record show. And at the record show was a guy, a local guy. I was new to the area. He had a booth that he only sold metal CDs. And I went up to him and I said, hey, I'm really into Black Sabbath and stuff like Black Sabbath. I said, you got anything like that? And he played a couple things for me on a boombox. And I was like, I don't know. That doesn't really do it for me. And then I remembered that review I read of Review Your, Be Forewarned. Did I say Review Your Choices? Be Forewarned was the Pentagram album I found. I said, I remembered that review, and I said to this guy, have you ever heard of doom metal? And he just went, hold on. And he went and he got Epicus Doomicus Metallicus. Gave it to me, I had it on CD. This was before the remasters. In fact, my original CD version is from the album. You can hear the needle being lifted and dropped on it. I don't know if it's a bootleg or what, but I took it out to my car. I could I could take you back to the exact place I had my car parked. You have moments in your life that are frozen in time. That is one of these moments. I put that in my CD player and was like, this is what I've been looking for. It had that Black Sabbath feel to it, but it was still different enough. And I just loved it. And it was like a continuation of Be Forewarned, the Pentagram album. That had a Black Sabbath vibe to it, but this had it too, but in a different way. And I remember totally getting into it. This was the early days of the internet, so it was hard to get information even on the internet. I remember somehow this guy that had the CD store, he said, you got to come to my store. All he carried was, this is going to be hard to believe, all he carried was doom metal and stoner metal at his store. He carried nothing else. If you went into his store and said, hey, got any Iron Maiden? He went, go to the mall down the street, you know. So he was like, you got to come to my store. So I came back to his store and I was like, dude, Candlemass, more. What? Tell me more. And he said, all right, well, here's Nightfall, but it's got a different singer on it. And I was like, oh, that's it. I'm going to take this home. It's going to be a growler. It's going to be nothing. It's going to be over, you know? And then I put in Nightfall and I was like, okay, yes, now, you know, this is good. So Epicus still is I go back and forth between Nightfall and Epicus. Probably I'll end up going with Epicus more than I do with Nightfall, because it was the first Candlemass for me. And for me, like all you guys have mentioned, it really did have sort of like a mysterious quality to it. Even the CD I had no information on the inside. It was, the sound of the album made me think of the first Black Sabbath album. It's got kind of a reverby, roomy, atmospheric sound to it, like they might have recorded it in a church or something. You know, it just has this real sort of eerie, mysterious quality to it. The songs were very epic, like you know, we've mentioned, and it just had a certain sort of mystique and charm to it. And I think the timing for me too, of sort of discovering this, and you know, and like Mattias said, it kind of became my band, that I could go to all my friends and be like, you got to check out this band called Candlemass, you know. And this was before the remasters had come out. So my first versions of the CDs were all imports or used copies that this guy at the store was able to get me, because the remasters hadn't even come out yet. So, but yeah, it's just an amazing album, and it's got a certain charm to it, that lightning in a bottle, that I don't think could, even if you tried to recreate it, I don't know if anybody could. And it's all the more amazing because, like P.O. mentioned in the introduction, it was really recorded on a shoestring budget in a studio that really was a demo studio. It really wasn't by any stretch like a full-blown proper studio or anything, but they managed to capture a real vibe and stuff on this album. So I just think it's great.
Yeah, it really is. It's an amazing album, and I mean, you can talk about the sound. I guess that it's made in a very cheap studio, but I mean, you could also hear how much time and effort they put into the recording, even though the studio and the equipment itself might have not been state of the art. They put the hours in and they did the performances. One of the aspects of the album that I think is I mean, if you put it this way, when the band goes into the studio the first time to record their debut album, there's always a bit of chance to it, that they don't know their way around the studio. They're maybe early days of their how they play and how they write songs and everything like that. And with Epicus, they for sure had excellent songwriting on that album directly. I mean, the first album and the songwriting is up here. But then again, they used a singer who they hadn't rehearsed with, who just came to the studio. There's chance. They had this guitar player to do the leads, like P.O. said. And I mean, that was just a stroke of luck, I guess, too. Because I mean, it was just, okay, if these guys don't work, what's the plan B? Is there even a plan B? I'm not so sure. I mean, they said that Leif was going to do the vocals. Maybe he would have in the end if it hadn't worked out with Johan. But then again, would we hear about Candlemass today if it hadn't been Johan's voice, who then, I mean, I'm not saying that it's his voice that makes the album famous, but it's such a huge part of the sound of the album, and his quality as a singer is just astounding, really. So there's so many factors, even for a debut album, there's so much chance. It could have been crap, but it was gold. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not even exaggeration. An exaggeration. It was pure chance, because Johan, like you said, never rehearsed with Candlemass. He never recorded a demo so they could hear what it sounded like on the album. He actually he practiced on, he got demos of the songs, some of them with Leif's vocals, some of them without vocals, and he practiced the songs at home. And then he came down to the studio, and Mappe, the guitar player, told us when he came to the studio to record, they started with Crystal Ball. They had only ever heard Leif sing the song, and he went into the booth and started singing Crystal Ball, and then they dropped their jaws to the floor, like, what the fuck? Where does this guy come from? How did we find someone like this? This is like a completely new song, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
And Johan was singing in Swedish with his band that he was.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting, if you, and I know we discussed this in our chat before we made the video. If you think about where Leif was coming from with his influences, really, maybe the only band doing anything remotely like this is the Chicago band Trouble. And Trouble, is sort of, I think, a band that for Leif, and I think even Mats Ekström mentions this too, that they were just big fans of this band, and they realized, like, wow, there's somebody else out there in the world that's kind of thinking roughly along the same lines as we are. And then you throw in Leif's other influences of the new wave of British heavy metal, like Angel Witch and Witch Fiend and stuff like that, Venom, and you sort of put all that together. Whereas a lot of other bands at that time were going for, you think of what was coming out of Sweden at that time. Who was the biggest metal band out of Sweden at that point? Probably Europe, right? So a lot of people are going in that direction. And here Leif is drawing his influences from Trouble, the new wave of British heavy metal, and stuff like this, and he sort of puts this all together in sort of this unique package. And it's for me, it's just like you said, Mattias, the songs, the songwriting is so there. It's not like they're sort of struggling, and we all have these obscure metal bands from the 80s, right? And they always have like a bunch of songs that are pretty good, but then there's always like one or two songs that are just left field, like, because they don't really know what they're trying to do. There's like a pop song, a ballad pop, or some weird thing on the record that you can just tell the band isn't 100% sure what they're trying to do. But you do not get that impression at all on this. You get the impression that Leif, the band, they had a vision. The songs are all fit together. There really is no low points or filler songs on the album. There's only 6 songs on the record, right? But it all works, and it's just such a great combination of the atmosphere, the great songwriting, the great vocals. So Yeah, it's interesting that the only really other touching point at that time for this kind of thing was Trouble. And I would say Trouble, you can hear the connections between Candlemass and Trouble, but there's still, I think Life still takes it in a different, Candlemass took it in a different direction.
Yeah, I think Trouble was the closest you had up until that point. Because the thing is, there weren't a lot of doom metal bands around. You had Pentagram and Saint Vitus, but they both of them obviously weren't 100% metal bands. If you know what I mean, they certainly weren't influenced by Iron Maiden or Dio era Black Sabbath or anything. They had other influences and what they pulled these heavy riffs from, and so Trouble was the closest. They had this massive guitar sound that, which I believe was a role model for Candlemass and other doom metal bands as well. But Trouble still had a lot of other influences that weren't metal. It was a part of their package. But Candlemass came out and took that heaviness, and they were a 100% metal, hence epic doom metal. So I think it was in a way the first doom metal band that was actually 100% a metal album, not just a doom album.
Yeah, and it also, the skull on the cover is just an iconic, something that's stayed with the band, to represent the band. It totally fit the mood and vibe of the record. So just the entire package screamed, epic doom metal. It just had really, really worked. So.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's take it.
And I think it's important also to point out that even though it's very slow and very, very heavy, it's very melodic.
Yeah.
And there's vocal lines that you can sing along to. Same with the guitar solos. It's very melodic solos, like Schenker type of guitar playing with the solos. And same thing with that guy. I mean, he just came to the studio and did his thing. So it's impressive, to say the least.
Indeed.
For me, that's in a nutshell what's so great about Candlemass, because they have they have epic, massive, heavy, slow songs, but they aren't hard to listen to. There's nothing difficult about listening to Candlemass, and you notice that even more on Nightfall, even though the songs reach the 7-minute mark. They're heavy and massive. All of them got massive like melody, hooks, and choruses you can sing along to immediately. I mean, if you hear At the Gallows End one time, you're never going to you're going to sing the chorus next time you hear it. So that's really the massive music that isn't difficult to listen to.
Yeah. All right. Well, the album opens with Solitude, maybe their biggest hit, if you will, even though, of course, they didn't have any radio hits or anything, but this is kind of their Paranoid, if you will. It's their song that they play. They usually close out every concert that they do with this song. The 12-string guitar in the beginning of the song, the super heavy riff, that's sort of their trademark song, if you will. Thoughts, Mattias?
Well, what can I say? It's an instant classic. And if I remember this correct, this was a song that was also very new to the band when they went into the studio. Because correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but I think they had like the 5 other songs that they had decided to be on the album, with Demon's Gate being the opening song. And then Leif did this new song, Solitude, that they thought was good, and they put it on the album, right?
Yeah, they had 5 songs and it wasn't enough, so they needed another one, and Leif put that together.
Not unlike the story of Paranoid with Black Sabbath. They needed another song, they threw it together, and it turns out to be sort of the song that represents the band. Johan's amazing, emotional vocal delivery. I think that's something else that was unique at this time. You had so many metal singers, and I mentioned this earlier, so many metal singers trying to sing really high, really bombastic, and this was so emotional
Yeah.
The lyrics and his delivery is so dramatic and emotional. It really became a trademark, a signature of epic doom metal, that you had to have these really emotional, feeling from the gut type of singing and lyrics and everything. And this song puts that on display for sure. Tons of atmosphere on this song. The guitar at the beginning is just, it's great. All right, Demon's Gate starts off with the vocal thing at the beginning, which is Leif's slowed down voice, and then that heavy drum part, and again the fantastic vocals and the big hanging chords and everything, and absolutely killer. Thoughts?
I think it's probably one of my top 10 favorite songs of Candlemass, and they have plenty of good songs to pick from. But this is just, I never grow tired of it. I think it's an amazing song. And I like to point out that for this song also, the drumming, Mats Ekström's drums is amazing, with all the rolls and the toms and everything. I mean,
millions of toms.
Please use the full length of your drum kit and extend it a bit more. I think it's great.
Pio, any thoughts on Demon's Gate?
Yeah, for me, Demon's Gate is hands down is the best song Candlemass ever recorded. I think everything about it is perfect. Because if you think about it, by all usual standards, Demon's Gate is too long. Everything goes on for too long. It's like 4 bars too much of everything. There's a verse too much. The intro is too long before the vocals enter, but nobody cares, because you're going to want to hear it no matter how long it is. You're going to want to hear it twice or 10 times anyway. So because it's everything about it, every note is so perfect. This is like, to me, it's like the epitome of everything that epic doom metal is supposed to be. Grinding riffs, those melancholic guitar melodies, and the drumming and the dramatic vocals and the double bass that builds up the tension before the chorus, and everything is it's just pure metal heaven. One of the best metal songs recorded any genre ever.
Yeah.
Me.
And like you said before there, it's, even though the songs are long, you don't grow tired of it. And this one is, it's over 9 minutes long.
Yeah.
And it still works without having like 10 different parts. That's few parts, but all parts are very long, but still you still want to listen to it. I love it.
If they would have been in a proper studio on a decent budget with a hotshot producer, and they had brought in that song, he would have said, guys, this song is too long, you should cut it down to 5 minutes, and it would have been disastrous, of course. And that, and then of course the unheard original supposed 9-minute version of Demon's Gate that nobody ever got to hear would be legendary today. But it's better to actually have it, I suppose.
Yeah. Crystal Ball is next. Just another one right along, another catchy, like you guys mentioned, the melodies in this. You just remember it as soon as you hear it. And for me, as I'm always a sucker for fantasy style lyrics, and you're sort of getting that all over a lot of these songs. Crystal Ball, being one of them, just killer riffs left and right, amazing vocal delivery, great lyrics. The crystal ball, it's just great. Love it. Mattias, thoughts on Crystal Ball?
Yeah, it's one of the more short songs. it's only like, I think it's 5 minutes.
5 minutes, 23 seconds.
Yeah, I mean that's radio material.
You're right. It's the shortest song on the album.
Yeah, it's a real good song, and it's also one of these songs, just like Solitude, that they just kept playing, no matter. Correct. even think they played it with Björn Flodqvist when they had the 13 Sun lineup. They did Crystal Ball, I
I
think.
think so,
Yeah.
Crystal Ball and Solitude are the only two Candlemass songs I think that have been sung live by all the Candlemass singers.
Interesting trivia. Yeah. Yeah. You got any thought, any other thing you want to say on it, Per-Ola, Crystal Ball?
I love Crystal Ball. Especially I love the verses. I don't know. There's always been something to me with the verses. I don't know if it's the beat or the pacing or something that sounds a little bit off. There's something I can't put my finger on it, but something weird about the beat to the verse. It sounds like, oh, maybe our producer should have probably told them to play it differently, but it gives the verse like a really nice hang, like, you know, waiting for the beat, and it's not really there, but it comes like half a millisecond later, and that makes the songs twice as heavy.
Yeah.
All right, then side 2 opens with Blackstone Wielder. Here's one of the other, we got a 7-minute and 34-second kind of epic on here. This is kind of if you were to say a deep cut from the record, maybe this is one of the deep cuts, something that I think they started adding this back in their set a little later on, but
to my knowledge, they only played Blackstone Wheeler in its entirety twice in their career.
Okay.
Maybe a few more times, but it's by far the least played song from Epicus.
Because it kind of has the most, well, we'll talk about the middle section here. I'll let you guys talk about the middle section. It's got the most kind of different little changes to it. And I think it's the middle section is what scares them away a little bit from playing it live, because I think it's kind of got this interesting middle section. So I'll let you guys explain what's going on in the middle section of this song.
I think isn't it the lyrical idea that there are the 3 wise men sort of inverted, like evil 3 wise men or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the kind of joke in the song is that they play this Christmas hymn called, it's known in Sweden under different names, Bethlehem's Stjärna, the Star of Bethlehem, or Gläns över sjö och strand, which is the opening line for the song.
Yeah.
And that's the thing they play in the middle of the song.
Yeah, it's 30 seconds in.
And that's, I mean, when I heard it, it was like, what? Why is this? This is like a Christmas carol you had to sing in school, at Christmas concerts in Sweden. And then there's this doom band doing this instrumental version with a melody. It was just, this is so weird. But I also thought it was kind of cool at the same time, because I thought it fitted. But then again, I was just a kid, so what did I know? Now I'm so used to it, so I'm not sure is it a good idea? I don't know. I think so.
I think it is a good idea, because somehow it ties in with the lyrics, but it's really sick, and really it's so far out. It's in a lot of ways it's sicker than the Siggy Fürst EP. Because it's such a beautiful inside joke, because this song is like the most commonly known Christmas hymn in Sweden. Everybody knows the song. Everybody has sung it in school, and everybody has heard it in church if they've ever been to a church around Christmas. And as far as I know, this song is only sung in Sweden, nowhere else. So nobody outside Sweden would recognize it. So to them, it's just probably nothing strange about that middle part at all. It's just some weird cool notes thrown in. And it's weird that you hears this song for the first time, and after the first chorus, I think there's what? Whoa. Why did they throw that in there?
What do you think of it, John, listening as a non-Swedish person?
It just sounds like kind of like a folk melody. I remember just thinking that that was the vibe maybe that they were going for, was kind of like a folkish melody type of thing. I don't know, just sounded like it sounded like a cool little sort of melodic melody that they threw in the middle there. And I love the end of the song when it is not unwielder is mine. It's just such an epic ending to the song. So, all right.
Have you thought about the shift between side A and side B of the record? Because all the songs on the side B, beginning with Blackstone Wheeler, don't have as much linear structures. They have a lot more different parts tied together in different ways. Whereas all the songs in side A, Solitude and Crystal Ball especially, but also Demon's Gate, even though it's long, they follow the verse chorus formula, whereas the songs in side B do not. It's like the songs get quirkier on side B.
For sure.
They're more like old type of Black Sabbath writing, where you have parts coming in and out that don't necessarily connect to each other, like you say, like the songs do on side A.
Yeah.
All right, then we've got Under the Oak. This starts with a real heavy Sabbathy riff. For me, when I heard this, it was like, yeah, okay, this sounds like a Tony Iommi riff. I love Johann's vocal in this. This is a song that would appear later on the Tales of Creation album. Yeah. But I think on here it's a little doomier, it's a little slower, it's got more atmosphere to it. I think Johann's vocals, maybe my favorite thing from him on this album is the "Hear my prayer crying," when he goes up really high into his range. And like that final verse is give me a sign. It's just a killer, epic killer riff, man, of Sabbathian Sabbath proportions. Something that could have been on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath or something. It's just great.
Mattias, did you hear the version of Under the Oak on Epicus before the Tales of Creation version?
I'm thinking about that actually. I could it be that I found Epicus as late as after Tales of Creation? I can't remember actually, to tell the truth. But I think I'm pretty sure I enjoy the Epicus version a lot more than the Tales of Creation version. The Tales of Creation version is good also, but the one on Epicus is just pure magic. It's an amazing song, and it's also been a mainstay in the Candlemass sets since they start to play as a live unit.
Yeah. Like I said, I had all the Messiah albums before I heard Epicus, so I was familiar with the song Under the Oak from Tales of Creation first, but I immediately liked the Epicus version more because it's slower, it's darker, it's got more emotion, it's just a lot more intense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
Probably my second favorite song on Epicus after Demon's Gate.
Yeah,
agreed.
All right, then the album closes out with a pretty epic number. Like we've been hit with a lot of epic numbers here, but A Sorcerer's Pledge with the acoustic guitar thing in the beginning. The way the song ends with the female vocalist who was Gilla Svensson.
Yeah.
Did I get that? Silla. Okay. She was a friend of Ragnæ, I believe, that they needed somebody that, and as I was prepping for this, reading the Behind the Wall of Doom book, they were thinking that they were going to sing like a choir. The band was going to sing, and it was a disaster. So the producer recommended bringing this girl in that he knew, and it just adds to the way it sort of fades out in a way with the vocal thing is just fantastic. The sort of fantasy style lyrics of it, Lord of the Rings, type of thing. Just, man, it just it all sets a template here for what epic doom metal would be. If you're an epic doom metal band, you got to have long songs. You got to have emotional, dramatic lyrics. You know, you got to have a song that fades out on your record. You know, you got to have some Tolkien or sorcery or fantasy style lyrics. You know, it's just like the blueprint for epic doom metal is all laid out here. And then maybe this song especially is one that a lot of bands, you know, you can hear this song, you know, being the whole album, but this song in particular really screams epic doom metal to me.
Yeah.
And the song always goes down really well live, and I think what they imagined doing in the studio back then, they do live now, because it's this crowd participation part at the end of the song, and Messiah was always good at getting the audience going. And I mean, that's pretty unique for, like we talked about earlier, for a doom band, because most doom bands per se don't do that. They don't have this melodic side to them like Candlemass always have had. And I mean, the end of, maybe I'm sticking my neck out a bit here, but I mean, if you just concentrate on the melodies, I mean, you could hear a heavy Europe kind of version using these melodies, and no one would have said, that sounds odd. It would just sound like something melodic, something strong that you would sing along to. But in this case, it's on a Epic Doom album put out by an underground French label that no one's ever heard of. I mean, again, there's so many strange things about this album that just makes it wonderful. And the Sorcerer's Pledge is just the perfect ending. And the way it fades out with the female vocals is just, I'm getting goosebumps here. Yeah, just thinking about it.
Johan at the beginning, the way he sings that beginning, you know, time stands still, which is so just the acoustic guitar back then. It's like, you're right, it's kind of like hair standing up on your arm. P.O., thoughts on?
I love the keyboards on this.
Oh yeah, right. I forgot.
Yeah, I think, and Demon's Gate too. They have some keyboards on that.
And
weird.
So does Solitude, right? Solitude has a little keyboard thing in it too, right?
At the beginning with the acoustic guitar, there's some keyboards as well. I think it's a bit weird they didn't really use any keyboards on any of the subsequent albums. Not that I can think of anyway.
Yeah, it really wasn't until much later that they started getting back to that.
Yeah.
But maybe it was because they were a trio, literally. And if they had had a second guitar player in the band when they wrote and rehearsed, maybe then Ragnar wouldn't have his input putting on these keyboards or suggesting the keyboards. I don't know how it went, but I think he suggested that he could put the keyboards on, and they thought it sounded good. Just to, you don't need to fill the void when you have a guitar like Mappes, but you get my drift. To just add something to the sound was one of his things as a producer. The few means that they used for the album, and one was that he had his keyboard ideas.
There's enough rhythm guitar tracks on this album as it is anyway.
All right. Any final thoughts on Sorcerer's Pledge, P.O.?
Love the keyboards. No. What can I say? It's a great song, and it's probably the most consistently up tempo song on the album. It never really loses any. It's got this calm intro part, but after that, it never doesn't lose any steam, and it's a good ending to the massive album with this kind of not gonna say uplifting, but inspiring song to let go of some of that energy before the album ends. I think it's wise to put it last, and I think it's not my favorite song on the album, but like all the others, it's great. And like Mattias said, it's also a very loved live song in the live set. It's usually like the last song before the encore, and it's been I mean, the band aborted their attempt at singing a choir, but it's been plenty of terrible choirs sung to that song since, so it's been all made up for.
Yeah.
I've been in some of them myself.
I think in many ways it's turned out to be like the Hallowed Be Thy Name of Candlemass, a song that they usually play and that the fans enjoy, and it's a bit on the more for Maiden it's an epic song, Hallowed Be Thy Name, but I mean for Candlemass it's everything is epic metal, but yeah, great ending to a great album.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, you guys got any final thoughts on Epicus Doomicus Metallicus? Or have we covered it? We've said it all.
I mean, there's so much trivia to talk about when talking about Epicus, but I mean, it's all in here. If you can find a secondhand Candlemass Chronicles, it's all here.
Or go out and buy the box set so you can get the get the book in there in the box set. So, all right, okay. Well, I would like to thank Mattias and Per-Ola for joining me here at the Lair today for this discussion of an absolute, a true definition milestone moment album, an album that has just grown in stature over time. And, you know, when you look back at pivotal albums in the history of heavy metal, you know, this has got to be somewhere in that discussion there for bringing about, even though doom metal, you know, you can trace the origins of doom metal around and everywhere, but this is kind of where it all kind of comes together. And the epic doom metal, it certainly has a place in the Hall of Fame of metal. So just an amazing album that all of us here love. So let us know in the comments down below what you guys think of Epicus Doomicus Metallicus. I know that there's some doom metal fans out there. I see them in the comments section. So let us know what you guys think of Epicus Doomicus down below. And thank you again, guys, for joining me here at the Lair. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.